Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Prostrating to Bhagavan Ramana, who shines as the self in all beings, we begin today's satsang with a prayer by Sapna Ganesh, followed by Muktakatrayam by Srinand Kumarji.
दक्षिणामूर्तिसारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमां रमणाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां शुक्लां वरदरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये आङ्गिकं भुवनं यस्य वाचिकं सर्ववाङ्मयम् आहार्यं चन्द्रतारादि तं नमः सात्विकं शिवम् ॐ नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय. Namo Ramana to everyone.
Namo Ramana madam. हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् याहम् इति साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वता मज्जता अवचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम् देहं मृण्मयवत् जडात्मकम् अहं बुद्धिर्लतस्यास्त्यतो नाहं तत्तद्भावशुद्धिसमये सिद्धात्मसद्भातः कोऽहं भावयुतः कुतो वरधिया दृष्टात्मनिष्ठात्मना सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचलशिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयम् सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचलशिवः वचन शिवः पूर्वो विभाति स्वयं। नमो रमण।
Namo Ramana. We will now have the chanting of Upadeshasaram by Uma Shripati and Srimati Ashwini Balaji.
नमो रमण। वायुरोधनात् क्रियते मना जालपक्षिवद्रोदसाधनम् चित्तवायवश्चित्क्रियायुताः शाकयोर्द्वयी शक्तिमूलक लयविनाशने उभयरोधने लयगतं पुनर्भवति नोऽमृतम् प्राणबन्धनात् क्लीनमानसम् एकचिन्तनात् नाशमेत्यद नष्टमानसोत्कृष्टयोगिन कृत्यमस्ति किं स्वस्तितिं यत दृश्यवारितं चित्तमात्मना चित्वदर्शनं तत्त्वदर्शनं मानसं तु किं मार्गणे कृते नैव मानसं मार्गार्जवात् वृत्तयस्त्वहं वृत्तिमाश्रिताः वृत्तयो मनो विद्यहं मन अहमयं कुतो भवति चिन्वत अहिपतत्यहं निजविचारणम् अहमिनाशभाज्यहमहं तया स्फुरतिरुत्स्वयं परमपूर्णसत्। नमो रमण।
Namo Ramana. We will now have 3 songs from Ramananjali Sangeetam, which will be presented by Srimati V. Radha, Savitri Krishnan and Jai Shri Ram Krishnan, and Kumari Revathi Shankar.
Namo Ramana to all. Today I will be presenting a song written by Sri Sadhu Om Swami. I am singing the Telugu translation. The translation is by Y.V. Venkateshwara Rao. Music is by L. Krishnan. అన్నామలలోనా అధివసించు రాజు అన్నామలలోనా అధివసించు రాజు ఆనందమైన బ్రతుకు ఆదరించి అనుగ్రహించు ఆనందమైన బ్రతుకు ఆదరించి అనుగ్రహించు అనుగ్రహించు రమణ దేవ అనుగ్రహించు రమణ దేవ అనుగ్రహించు రమణ దేవ అనుగ్రహించు రమణ దేవ ఎందెందరయంగా అంతా తానొకటే ఇందెందరయంగా అంతా తానొకటే నిన్నే తలచు నాకు సంతసము సమకూర్చు నిన్నే తలచు నాకు సంతసము సమకూర్చు అనుగ్రహించు రమణ దేవ అనుగ్రహించు రమణ దేవ అనుగ్రహించు రమణ దేవ అనుగ్రహించు రమణ దేవ నిన్ను స్తుతింప చాలవు మాటలే లేవు నిన్ను స్తుతింప చాలవు మాటలే లేవు జ్యోతిలో నా జ్యోతివై వెలగు స్వయం జ్యోతి జ్యోతిలోన జ్యోతివై వెలగు స్వయం జ్యోతి అనుగ్రహించు రమణ దేవ అనుగ్రహించు రమణ దేవ అనుగ్రహించు రమణ దేవ అనుగ్రహించు రమణ దేవ 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 అన్నామలలోనా ఆదివసించు రాజు నమో రమణ.
அருள் புரிவாய் ரமணேஷா சர்வேஷா ரமணேஷா அருள் புரிவாய் ரமணேஷா சர்வேஷா அருள் புரிவாய் ரமணேஷா அருணாச்சல சிவ ஞான விகாசா சுரநாயக தோழும் ஜோதி விலாசா அருணாச்சல சிவ ஞான விகாசா சுரநாயக தோழும் ஜோதி விலாசா கோலம் ஞான விசாரமை வேளா கோலம் ஞான விசாரமை வேளா குருவடிவா சஜ்ஜன பரிபாலா அருள் புரிவாய் ரமணேஷா சர்வேஷா ரமணேஷா அருள் புரிவாய் ரமணேஷா சர்வேஷா அருள் புரிவாய் ரமணேஷா கண்ணால் அருள் செய்யும் காம விநாச கருணாகரனே குரு ரமணேஷ கண்ணால் அருள் செய்யும் காம விநாச குருநா கருணாகரனே குரு ரமணேஷ அண்ணாமலை திரு அருள்முக தேஜா அண்ணாமலை திரு அருள்முக தேஜா மகாத்மா அருள் நகராஜா அருள் புரிவாய் ரமணேஷா சர்வேஷா ரமணேஷா அருள் புரிவாய் ரமணேஷா சர்வேஷா அருள் புரிவாய் ரமணேஷா. ஓம் நமோ பகவதே ஸ்ரீ ரமணாய.
We are meditating on the Ramana Suprabhatam. Today we will be going around the 20th verse. Shaktayudham hinachatena mayuravaho guptavatara bhagavan ramanapadeshaha त्वं षण्मुखः शिवसुतो वदनैकधारी श्रीशोणशैलभगवंस्तव सुप्रभातम् शक्त्यायुधं हि न च तेन मयूरवाहो गुप्तावतार भगवान् रमणापदेशः त्वं षण्मुखः शिवसुतौ वदनैकधारी श्रीशोणशैलभगवंस्तव सुप्रभातम्. Good morning, O Bhagavan of Arunachala. You have secretly incarnated in the guise of Bhagavan Ramana. Although possessing only one face, you are verily the six-faced Subramanya, Lord Shiva's son. Though you neither possess the Shakti weapon, nor do you mount the peacock. Bhagavan Ramana is the incarnation of Lord Subramanya. Ganapati Muni in his Ramana Chatvarimshat has told us that he is the avatar of Subramanya. Where is your Shula? Where is your peacock? Where are your six faces? But in giving jnana, our Bhagavan is like Subramanya, who wanted the whole world to be filled with jnanis. What can I give in return to you for giving me this state, says Muruganar Swami in this song. This is a Kannada translation. The Kannada translation is by J.H.P. Acharya, music by Ilayaraja. ಸುಂದರ ಶೂಲಪಾಣಿ ಸುಬ್ರಹ್ಮಣ್ಯ ಭುವಿಯಲಿ ಅವತರಿಸಿದೆ ಕವಿಯೇ ತಿರುಚುಳಿನಾಥನೇ ರಮಣ ನಾಮವು ಸುಂದರವು ಸುಂದರ ಶೂಲಪಾಣಿ ಸುಬ್ರಹ್ಮಣ್ಯ ಭುವಿಯಲಿ ಅವತರಿಸಿದೆ ಕವಿಯೇ ತಿರುಚುಳಿನಾಥನೇ ರಮಣ ನಾಮವು ಸುಂದರವು ನೀಚ ಮೂರ್ಖನು ನಾನು ನನಗೆ ಜನ್ಮವು ಕಳೆದಿಹ ಪರಮಾತ್ಮ ಶ್ರೇಷ್ಠ ಭಕ್ತನ್ನ ಮಾಡಿದೆ ಆಹಾ ಏನು ಕೊಡಲಿ ನಿನ್ನ ಒಲುಮೆಗೆ ನಿನ್ನ ಒಲುಮೆಗೆ ನಿನ್ನ ಒಲುಮೆಗೆ ಸುಂದರ ಶೂಲಪಾಣಿ ಸುಬ್ರಹ್ಮಣ್ಯ ಭುವಿಯಲಿ ಅವತರಿಸಿದೆ ಕವಿಯೇ ತಿರುಚುಳಿನಾಥನೇ ರಮಣ ನಾಮವು ಸುಂದರವು ಮಾಯಾತೀತನೆ ಶ್ರೀರಮಣ ಅರುಣ ಮಹಾಗಿರಿ ನೀನಹುದು ತಿರುಚುಳಿನಾಥ ರಮಣ ನಾಮವು ಸಾರ್ಥವು ಪ್ರಭುವೇ ನನ್ನಂತಹ ನೀಚಗೆ ಅಜ್ಞಾನಿಗೆ ಜ್ಞಾನವ ನೀಡಿದ ಗುರುವೇ ಶ್ರೇಷ್ಠ ಭಕ್ತನ್ನ ಮಾಡಿದೆ ಆಹಾ ಏನು ಕೊಡಲಿ ನಿನ್ನ ಒಲುಮೆಗೆ ನಿನ್ನ ಒಲುಮೆಗೆ ನಿನ್ನ ಒಲುಮೆಗೆ ಸುಂದರ ಶೂಲಪಾಣಿ ಸುಬ್ರಹ್ಮಣ್ಯ ಭುವಿಯಲಿ ಅವತರಿಸಿದೆ ಕವಿಯೇ ತಿರುಚುಳಿನಾಥನೇ ರಮಣ ನಾಮವು ಸುಂದರವು ಕದಂಬ ಮಾಲಾ ಧರಿಸಿದ ಸರ್ವಸಿದ್ಧನೇ ನಿತ್ಯನೇ ರಮಣ ತಿರುಚುಳಿ ದೇವನೇ ರಮಣ ತಿರುಚುಳಿ ದೇವನೇ ರಮಣ ಶ್ರೀನಾಮವು ಬಲು ಸುಂದರವು ದೀನನಾದ ನನ್ನಲ್ಲಿಯ ಭೇದ ಅಭೇದಗೈದ ತಂದೆ ಶ್ರೇಷ್ಠ ಭಕ್ತನ್ನ ಮಾಡಿದೆ ಆಹಾ ಏನು ಕೊಡಲಿ ನಿನ್ನ ಒಲುಮೆಗೆ ನಿನ್ನ ಒಲುಮೆಗೆ ನಿನ್ನ ಒಲುಮೆಗೆ ಸುಂದರ ಶೂಲಪಾಣಿ ಸುಬ್ರಹ್ಮಣ್ಯ ಭುವಿಯಲಿ ಅವತರಿಸಿದೆ ಕವಿಯೇ ತಿರುಚುಳಿನಾಥನೇ ರಮಣ ನಾಮವು ಸುಂದರವು ನೀಚ ಮೂರ್ಖನು ನಾನು ನನಗೆ ಜನ್ಮವು ಕಳೆದಿಹ ಪರಮಾತ್ಮ ಶ್ರೇಷ್ಠ ಭಕ್ತನ್ನ ಮಾಡಿದೆ ಆಹಾ ಏನು ಕೊಡಲಿ ನಿನ್ನ ಒಲುಮೆಗೆ ನಿನ್ನ ಒಲುಮೆಗೆ ನಿನ್ನ ಒಲುಮೆಗೆ. Namo Ramana. We will now have the sharing and reading from the book Forever is in the Now by Sri Nandakumarji.
Namo Ramana. In this, the book reading segment of our Satsangh, we continue our readings from Forever is in the Now, the timeless message of Sri Ramana Maharshi, edited and compiled by our founder president, Sri A.R. Natarajanji. We have read the first part of the article by Sadhuam Swamigal. Article is entitled Sadhana and Work. Sadhuam Swamigal, of course, has been introduced here as the author of The Path of Sri Ramana, parts 1 and 2, exceptional lyricist who has composed hundreds of songs on Ramana, an authority on Ramana's teachings. He has written commentaries on Ulladu Narpadu, Upadesha Mudiyar, and Guru Vachakat Kovai. In the first part, to look at it briefly in some points, Sadhuam Swamigal says that the primary charge against humanity is that, and in fact all living beings, is that they pay attention to the second and third persons and not to the first person. And that is diagnosed as the cause of all misery, and Bhagavan is proposed as the doctor, Bhavaroga Bishagvara, and he suggests the medicine of self-inquiry and the diet restriction of abstaining from paying unnecessary attention to second and third persons. Those who pay heed to this advice are called mumukshus, and when they start practicing, they will find that initially they will be able to sit not even for a few minutes, then slowly it will expand. And Sadhuam Swamigal says the doubt as to whether work can be continued is cleared by Bhagavan, that work need not be a hindrance. And Sadhuam Swamigal says, however, there will be a change in the attitude towards work, the spirit with which the work is done. Earlier, it was done with a feeling that the work itself is going to save us, give us something that cannot be taken away from us. But that spirit changes. He says, he gives an example that when a businessman hires a room, a business room, a shop in the center of the city for 1,000 rupees, will he merely aim to earn to pay the rent? No, he will try to earn at least 10,000 rupees so that there are profits. Similarly, we should not be satisfied with merely eking out a living and spending all the time and money in accumulating money and shelter and clothing. But the spirit should be that they should be treated as necessities on which just enough attention is to be spent, and all the rest of the attention, energy, spirit has to be spent in Atma Vicharam. And by that, he takes us to one more pointer, that in Atma Vicharam, when one is feeling stressed, one need not continue to do that, but instead should give a break, take rest, and then come back with renewed energy, because then the digging will be deep. He says that is one pointer he gives in sadhana, that when you are tired and you have done Atma Vicharam for quite some time, then take some rest from that, then come back to it with renewed energy. And we stop there. We continue the article. During the time of practice sadhana, our attention, which is now focused on the second and third person objects, has to turn back 180 degrees, so to speak, to focus itself on the first person. In the beginning, however, one's attention may be able to turn only 5, 10 or 15 degrees. This is because one's turning is resisted by a powerful spring. The spring of one's tendencies, vasanas or subtle desires towards worldly objects. Every time one tries to turn towards the first person, this spring of one's tendencies towards worldly objects will tend to pull one's mind back again towards the second and third persons. Therefore, the number of degrees one is able to turn will depend upon the firmness of one's desirelessness, vairagya, towards worldly objects, and upon the strength of one's longing, bhakti, to know the self. So, two factors: the desirelessness towards worldly objects and the love of self. Such vairagya and bhakti will be increased in one by regularly practicing self-attention, by earnestly praying to Sri Bhagavan, and by constantly associating with such persons or books as will repeatedly remind one. Only by knowing self can we attain real and enduring happiness. So long as we do not know the self, we will be endlessly courting and experiencing misery. Therefore, our first and foremost duty in life is to know the self. All other efforts will end only in vain. So he says this one should understand by going to satsangs and by reminding oneself of Bhagavan's teachings. One will come to this point that only by knowing the self can we attain real and enduring happiness. So long as we do not know the self, we will be endlessly courting and experiencing misery. Therefore, our first and foremost duty in life is to know the self. All other efforts will only end in vain. As one's desirelessness and longing to know the self thus increase by prayer to the Guru, by study, shravana of and reflection, manana upon his teachings, and by practice, nididhyasana of self-attention, one's ability to turn one's attention towards the first person will also increase until one will be able to turn it 90 degrees, 120 or even 150 degrees at each fresh attempt. When one's ability to turn one's attention selfward thus increases, one will be able to experience a tenuous current of self-awareness even while engaged in activity. There will be a tenuous current of self-awareness, he says, that is, one will be able to experience an awareness of one's being, which will not be disturbed by whatever one's mind, speech or body may be doing. In other words, one will be able to remember the feeling I am, which always underlines all one's activities. However, this tenuous current of self-awareness should not be taken to be the state of unceasing self-attention, because one will experience it only when one feels inclined to do so. The tenuous current will be experienced only when one feels inclined to do so. It is not natural yet. How then can one experience the state of unceasing self-attention, the state of unswerving self-abidance? The Guru's grace will more and more help those aspirants who thus repeatedly practice self-attention with great love, bhakti, to know the self. When a glowing fire and a blowing wind join together, they play wonders. Likewise, when the glowing fire of love of self-knowledge and the blowing wind of Guru's grace join together, a great wonder takes place. During one of his fresh attempts, the aspirant will be able to turn his attention a complete 180 degrees towards the self. That is, he will be able to achieve a perfect clarity of self-awareness, completely uncontaminated by even the least awareness of the second and third persons. Whereupon, he will feel a great change taking place spontaneously and without his effort. His power of attention, which he had previously tried so many times to turn towards self, and which had always slipped back towards the second and third persons, will now be caught under the grip of a powerful clutch, which will not allow it to turn again towards any second or third person. This clutch is the clutch of grace. Though grace has always been helping and guiding one, it is only when one is thus caught by its clutch that one becomes totally a prey to grace. If one once turns one's attention a full 180 degrees towards the self, one is sure to be caught by this clutch of grace, which will then take one as its own and will forever protect one from again turning towards second and third person objects. This state, in which the mind is thus caught by the clutch of grace and thereby drowned forever in its source, is known as the experience of true knowledge, jnananubhuti, self-realization, atma sakshatkaram, liberation, moksha, and so on. This alone can be called the state of unceasing self-attention. I'll read that again. Though grace has always been helping and guiding one, it is only when one is thus caught by its clutch and one becomes totally a prey to it that one becomes totally a prey to it. If one once turns one's attention a full 180 degrees towards the self, one is sure to be caught by the clutch of grace, which will then make one as its own and will forever protect one from again turning towards second and third person objects. This state, in which the mind is thus caught by the clutch of grace and thereby drowned forever in its source, is known as the experience of true knowledge, jnananubhuti, self-realization, atma-sakshatkaram, liberation, moksha, and so on. This alone can be called the state of unceasing self-attention. Some people doubt, if it is so, will the mind then remain drowned forever in samadhi? Will it not be able to come out again and know all the second and third persons of this world? Is it not a fact that even Bhagavan Sri Ramana spent nearly 54 years in the state of self-realization and that most of the time he was seen to be attending to second and third persons? Yes, it is true that though Sri Bhagavan always remained in the state of self-realization, yet in the outlook of others, he was seen to be knowing the world. How can this be accounted for? To remain with the body and mind completely inert is not the only sign of samadhi. Though after self-realization, some jnanis spend their entire lifetime completely oblivious of the body and the world, not all jnanis will necessarily remain thus. The return of body consciousness and consequently world consciousness after the attainment of self-realization is according to the prarabdha of that body. In the case of some, it might never return, while in the case of others, it might return within a second or after a few hours or days. But even in such cases where it does return, it will not be experienced as a knowledge of second or third persons. Even in such cases where it does return, that is the body consciousness and world consciousness returns, it will not be experienced as a knowledge of second or third persons. That is to say, the body and the world are not experienced by the jnani as second or third person objects other than himself, but as his own unlimited, undivided self. So long as one is an aspirant, one mistakes the limited form of one's body to be oneself, and consequently, the remaining portion of one's unlimited real self is experienced one by one as the world, a collection of second and third person objects. But after attaining self-realization, since one experiences oneself to be the unlimited whole, one discovers that all the second and third persons, which one was previously feeling to be other than oneself, are truly nothing but one's own self. Therefore, even while a jnani, in the view of onlookers, is attending to the second and third person objects, he is, in his own view, attending only to the self. Hence, even though he may appear to be engaged in so many activities, both physical and mental, he is in fact ever abiding in the natural state of unceasing self-attention. Therefore, unceasing self-attention is possible only in the state of self-realization and not in the state of practice, sadhana. What one has to do during the period of sadhana is to cultivate ever-increasing love to attain self-knowledge and to make intermittent but repeated attempts to turn one's attention a full 180 degrees towards the self. If one once succeeds in doing that, then unceasing self-attention will be found to be natural and effortless. I'll read the last two paragraphs again. To remain with the body and mind completely inert is not the only sign of samadhi. Though after self-realization, some jnanis spend their entire lifetime completely oblivious of the body and the world, not all jnanis will necessarily remain thus. The return of body consciousness and consequently world consciousness, as in the case of our Bhagavan, after the attainment of self-realization, is according to the prarabdha of that body. In the case of some, it might never return, while in the case of others, it might return within a second or after a few hours or days. But even in such cases where it does return, it will not be experienced as a knowledge of second or third persons. That is to say, the body and world are not experienced by the jnani as second and third person objects other than himself, but as his own unlimited, undivided self. So long as one is an aspirant, one mistakes the limited form of one's body to be oneself, and consequently the remaining portion of one's unlimited real self is experienced by one as the world, a collection of second and third person objects. But after attaining self-realization, since one experiences oneself to be the unlimited whole, one discovers that all the second and third persons which one was previously feeling to be other than oneself are truly nothing but one's own self. Therefore, even while a jnani is, in the view of onlookers, attending to second and third person objects, he is, in his own view, attending only to the self. Hence, even though he may appear to be engaged in so many activities, both physical and mental, he is in fact ever abiding in the natural state of unceasing self-attention. Therefore, unceasing self-attention is possible only in the state of self-realization and not in the state of practice sadhana. What one has to do during the period of sadhana is to cultivate ever-increasing love to attain self-knowledge and to make intermittent but repeated attempts to turn one's attention a full 180 degrees towards the self. If one once succeeds in doing the unceasing self-attention, in doing this, then unceasing self-attention will be found to be natural and effortless. That 180 degrees is the point where the ego is consumed by the self. Once the effort maker is consumed by the self, then there is no effort. Self-attention is natural and effortless, says Sadhuvam Swamigal. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. We will now have self-inquiry by Sri Nanda Kumarji.
Namo Ramana. I am standing in for Tilipji. We will take a random talk, read through it, and then sit in practice of Atmacharan. We are taking talk number 473, dated 15th March 1938. Talk 473. Someone remarked, it is said that they get mukti unasked who live or die within a radius of 30 miles of around Arunachala. It is also admitted that only by jnana is liberation obtained. The Purana also remarks that Vedanta Vijnana is difficult to get. So, mukti is difficult. But life or death around the hill bestows mukti so easily. How can it be? I'll read there. Someone remarked, it is said that they get mukti unasked, who live or die within a radius of 30 miles around Arunachala. It is also admitted that only by jnana is liberation obtained. The Purana also remarks that Vedanta Vijnana is difficult to get. So mukti is difficult. But life or death around the hill bestows mukti so easily. How can it be? Maharishi. Shiva says, by my command. Those who live here need no initiation, diksha, etc. but get mukti. Such is the command of Shiva, says Bhagavan. Devotee. The Purana also says that those who are born here are Shiva's group of followers. such as ghosts, spirits, disembodied beings, etc. Bhagavan. So it is said of other kshetras as well. Example, Tiruvarur, Chidambaram. Devotee, how does mere life or death here confer mukti? It is difficult to understand. Maharishi, Darshana Abrasadasi, Janana Kamalalaye, Kashyam tu Maranam, Mukti Smaranat Arunachale. This is a shloka. Bhagavan is quoting the shloka. Darshanat Abrasadashi, Jananat Kamalalaye, Kashyantu Maranam, Mukti Smaranat Arunachale. To see Chidambaram, to be born in Tiruvaru, to die in Banaras, and to merely think of Arunachala is to be assured of liberation. Jananat Kamalalaye means by being born in the Kamalalaya. What is Kamalalaya? It is the heart. Similarly, Abrasadasi means seat of consciousness. Again, Kashi is the light of realization. Remembering Arunachala completes the verse. So, it must also be understood in the same sense. Devotee. So, bhakti is necessary. Maharishi. Everything depends on the outlook. One sees that all born in Tiruvaru, or visiting Chidambaram, or dying in Benares, or contemplating Arunachala, are muktas. Devotee, I think of Arunachala, but still I am not a mukta. Maharishi, change of outlook is all that is necessary. See what such a change did for Arjuna. He had the vision of the cosmic self. Sri Krishna says, gods and saints are eager to see my cosmic form. I have not fulfilled their desires. Yet I endow divine sight by which you can see that form. Well, having said so, does he show what he is? No. He asks Arjuna to see in him all that he desires to see. If that were his real form, it must be changeless and known for what it is worth. Instead, Arjuna is commanded to see whatever he desires. So where is the cosmic form? It must be in Arjuna. Therefore, Arjuna finds gods and saints in that form, and that they are praising the Lord. If the form be held from gods and saints, as said by Krishna, who are they of Arjuna's vision? Devotee. They must be in his imagination. Maharishi. They are there because of Arjuna's outlook. Devotee. Then the outlook must be changed by God's grace. Bhagavan. Yes, that happens to bhaktas. Devotee. A man dreams of a tiger, takes fright and wakes up. The dream tiger appears to the dream ego, who is also frightened. When he wakes up, how is it that ego disappears and the man wakes up as the waking ego? Bhagavan. That establishes that the ego is the same. Dream, wakefulness and sleep are passing phases of the same ego. Devotee. It is so difficult to spot the mind. The same difficulty is shared by us all. Maharshi. You can never find the mind through the mind. Pass beyond it in order to find that it is non-existent. Devotee. Then one must directly go to seek the ego. Is it so? Bhagavan. That is it. The questions over two paths of attaining self-realization. One is the Bhakti Marga and the other is the Jnana Marga. And the devotee starts questioning, how can in the Bhakti Marga be liberation guaranteed to those who are merely born in and around Tiruvannamalai? He is a Jnana Margi, obviously by the questions that he is asking. He doesn't have the knowledge of what faith can do, what bhakti can do. Now, it is said that spiders, lions, elephants living in Arunachala have attained mukti just by desiring one thing, that I should be born in and near you. That's all. We know that Lakshmi the cow had that one desire only, to be near Bhagavan. That was enough for it to be given mukti. But what happens when we come to the intellect is that we lose our ability to have belief and faith and surrender. The ability to surrender to that one power we somehow lose and substitute it with doubt and reasoning. So Bhagavan slowly turns the questioner from the path he is not suited for. The surrender and bhakti is obviously not suited for, because he is doubting Shiva's statement. Bhagavan has said this in 2-3 places, especially to Devraj Mudaliar. Devraj Mudaliar also asked the same question. How can somebody guarantee mukti just being born in Tiruvannamalai? Bhagavan says it is Supreme Court order. It is the order of Shiva. And if one can believe that and surrender, that is enough. But many of us are sadhakas who have missed that bus. So Bhagavan slowly turns him around with the shloka by saying that all those places, Tiruvannamalai, Tiruvarur, Chidambaram, Kashi, all these are nothing but the light of the self. To be born, to die, to have darshan, to think. All this means self-abidance. That's all. Let the ego be abiding the self. Then slowly Bhagavan brings the sadhaka to his key point, that the waking, dream and deep sleep are changing phases, and the I is the common factor. If you hold that, then you come to the self, which is beyond the 3 states of waking, dream and deep sleep, which is Jnana Marga Sadhana. And then the devotee catches on, oh, that means I should directly look for the ego, is it not? Bhagavan says, that is it. That is the path for you. When we have missed the bus of bhakti and we do not have that kind of trust and faith and doubt God itself, then we have to go in our path. The path now we are trudging as each thought arises. One should take the responsibility not to go behind the thought, but to inquire for whom is this thought. Ee yochane yarige. This thought is for me. Who am I? Takes us directly to where we should attend, the first person. The second and third persons, which arise as thoughts, as Sadhu Swamigal says, are dropped, and one turns firmly towards the first person. With repeated practice, one gains the ability of making the 180 degrees turn, where we are consumed by Shiva, where we are consumed by the self. At that point, we really understand how the guarantee was given. That just think of me, Smarana Arunachala. Just be having one desire of being born near me, that is enough. We realize how that could have been easily the path which brought me to the same self. Surrender is equally efficacious as Atmavicharam. But since we have this instrument of intellect, Atmavicharam it is. That is the path for us. And that is the path we are going to take for the next 10 minutes in practice of Atmavicharam. Revathi, you will set the time for us. For 10 minutes, we will practice holding the eye. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. Have the sharing of Dakshinamurti Stotram by Sri Venkatesh Deshpande sir.
Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviram Karvavahe Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Dakshinamurti Sarambham Shankaracharya Madhyama Ramanacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Parampara. Vande Guru Parampara. Vande Guru Parampara. So we are doing manana on Dakshinamurti Stotram. So why are we doing mana? Because there must be a reason that we do anything in life. We just don't do everything for nothing. So the reason we do is that God in the form of the Guru, God in the form of the Guru with form takes me to the formless. That's what Sadhu Om was saying beautifully in what Nandakumar was reading, that God in the form of Guru with form takes me to the formless. What happens by that? When I transcend form, I become fearless. Why? Because I am deathless. Death is of the form. So the form, the Guru takes us to the formless because death is of the form. So by Bhagwan's grace, we continue to do manana on the fourth verse today, and I request Sapna to kindly chant the Dhyana Shloka as well as the fourth verse.
Yes, sir. मौनव्याख्या प्रकटितः परब्रह्मतत्त्वं युवानां वर्षिष्टान्ते वसदृषिगणैः आवृतं ब्रह्मनिष्ठैः आचार्येन्द्रं करकलितचिन्मुद्रमानन्दमूर्तिं स्वात्मा रामं मुदितवदनं दक्षिणामूर्तिमीडे नानाच्छिद्रघटोदरस्थितमहादीपप्रभाभास्वरं ज्ञानं यस्य तु चक्षुरादिकरणाद्वारा बहिः स्पन्दते जानामीति तमेव भान्तम् अनुभात्ये तत्समस्तं जगत् तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नम इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नम इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sapna. I salute Dakshinamurti, the young Guru, who teaches the knowledge of Brahman through silence, who is surrounded by disciples who are themselves rishis and scholars in the Vedas. I worship Sri Dakshinamurti, who is a teacher of teachers, whose hand is held in the sign of knowledge, Chinmudra, whose nature is fullness, who reveals in himself, who is ever silent. So we're doing manana on the verse number 4. He whose intelligence The beautiful verse. He is whose intelligence flashes outside through the eyes and other sense organs, just like the bright light of a great lamp placed in a jar having many holes, and after whose shining this whole universe of objects shines. To him, the divine teacher, Sri Dakshinamurti, is this prostration. I read this beautiful meaning. He whose intelligence flashes outside through the eyes and other sense organs, just like the bright light of a great lamp placed in a jar having many holes, and after whose shining this whole universe of objects shines. To him, the divine teacher, Sri Dakshinamurti, is this prostration. Many devotees have seen Bhagwan as this light. So this verse stands out due to the metaphor it uses. The metaphor used here is a lamp placed inside a pot, a ghat. The pot has been pierced with many holes. You see the beams of light streaming out of the pot through those holes. Sri Shankara uses this beautiful imagery as a very profound metaphor. The whole sentence, the first sentence, is one word. Actually, in Sanskrit, it is known as samasa. Samasa. Jnanam typically means knowledge, but it also means consciousness. Like Vanat Kumar says, Atman, Jnanam, all are synonymous words. For example, in famous Vedantic term, Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Jnanam. Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam. Jnanam means consciousness. Jnanam in this verse refers to consciousness. This consciousness is shining like the light of a lamp. It is not an ordinary lamp, but a great lamp, Mahadeepa. It is consciousness. Maha literally means big, but here it does not mean just big. It has a very different perspective that is explained ahead. This lamp is placed in the belly of a pot that is pierced in many places. Nana. This light of consciousness is like the lamp placed in the belly of a pot. The pot is pierced with many holes. The light streams out of the pot. If something is near the pot, it is illumined. But it is illumined only if it is in the stream of the light coming out of the pot. In the same way, if something is in the way of your eye, it is illumined. If it is behind you, it would not get illumined. So it has to be within the scope of these beams of light. The beams of light leaving our eyes, leaving our ears, leaving out of our senses, going out in the world, contacting the sense objects and returning the knowledge of the sense object to us. This is the conception of sense perception. This means the source of consciousness is within us. If I am aware of the things outside, there must be some means for my consciousness to contact the external object and return with the knowledge of that object. This is completely in conformance of our experience. Our consciousness does, in a very real sense, pick up the knowledge of the external objects and brings it back to us. The light of consciousness not only illumines your mind, but travels out to bring the knowledge. This light of consciousness is extraordinary because it is present simultaneously in every living being. So this is a beautiful statement. This light of consciousness is extraordinary because it is present simultaneously in every living being, every pot, so to speak. What makes it extraordinary is that the same light of consciousness is present behind thoughts of everyone. That is why it's called Mahadeepa. To understand this clearly, please note that my thoughts are known to me and your thoughts are known to you. There is no difference in the way thoughts are known. Let us introduce the concept of knownness. The objects have knownness. Your thoughts have knownness. My thoughts have knownness. But the knownness, the way thoughts are known of your thoughts, is no different than the knownness of my thoughts. Consciousness does not have any particular qualities. For example, there is no male consciousness and female consciousness. There is no short consciousness and tall consciousness. There is no Indian consciousness and American consciousness. There is no black consciousness and white consciousness. Consciousness is featureless, nirguna. You cannot distinguish between your consciousness and my consciousness. They appear to be identical. That is why consciousness is called Mahadeepa. One consciousness is simultaneously present in every part, simultaneously illumining every mind, which is omnipresent. There is a common question that if my consciousness is the same as your consciousness, then why don't I know your thoughts? First of all, thank God for having this natural law. It is good, it's God's blessing that we do not know others' thoughts. It's difficult to deal with even our own thoughts, what to speak about dealing with others' thoughts. It's important to address this question. If my consciousness and your consciousness is identical, why don't I know your thoughts? The one who is asking the question is not the consciousness. It's a very, very important point. It is important to address this question. So if I say I am also consciousness and each one of us is also the same consciousness, Bhagavan says, if my consciousness and your consciousness is identical, why don't I know your thoughts? The one who is asking the question is not the consciousness. The one who is asking this question is the mind. And my mind is separate from your mind. Everyone's mind is in their own pot. Therefore, even though it is the same consciousness that illumines your thoughts and my thoughts, the thoughts belong to the mind. Mind is absolutely distinct. Hence, the thoughts that belong to one mind are not known to the other mind. Nonetheless, one consciousness illumines all. Not only the thoughts, but your consciousness also streams out of your eyes, streams out of your ears, through your nose, through your mouth, through your skin, and contact everything around it. This is how we come to know that the world around us. This is how we come to know the world around us. This knowledge, jnanam, is known as consciousness. This is what Bhagavan talks about in the first verse of this. But there is some very significant point that we need to pay attention to. It is important to address this question. If my consciousness and your consciousness is identical, why don't I know your thoughts? The one who is asking the question is not the consciousness. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. We will now have the sharing of Jnana Vichara Padalam, Devikalotram Jnana Vichara Padalam by Dr. Kalarani Rangaswamy.
ஓம் நமோ பகவதே ஸ்ரீ ரமணாய. அருணாச்சலம் என அகமே நினைப்பவர் அகத்தை நேரறுப்பாய் அருணாச்சலம். Namo Ramana to all. With the abundance grace of Bhagavan, we are meditating on Devi Kalotra Jnana Vichara Padalam, very graciously given to us by Bhagavan in Tam. In the last satsang, we saw the mind which goes behind worldly objects, will not have an end for desires. Desire will come one after the other. Moreover, as mind has the capability of thinking, there will be no boundary for thinking at all. Mind's thinking will be greatly contradictory also. It will not stick on to one single opinion about a person. The opinion keeps on changing. He might have a thought for doing something very seriously at one point of time, but at the same moment or at the next moment, he shifts his mind for doing something else. I'll tell you an example. Out of a friend's compulsion, a person goes to a hotel. Actually, he was not hungry at all. For his friend's sake only, he accepts his invitation and goes with him and decides that he should have only idli because he is not hungry. But when he takes his seat in the hotel, he just watches what others are having in the hotel and what others are eating there. He gets tempted and orders a chola puri. The mind changes within few seconds. That is why Bhagavan says mind is more than a monkey. It's more than a monkey. Kurangai vida sali sittathai pidadu madaki. As it is not possible for a monkey to remain in one place, mind also cannot rest in one place at all. At one time it shows anger, next moment it feels sorry for it. So Bhagavan says, who are we to judge others? We cannot judge anyone by his appearance. So what should be done? The mind which is wandering, which is more than a monkey, should be made to abide in the self, which is its origin, from where it shoots up. For that, one has to turn the mind inside, and once it gets abide in the self, there will be samadrishti. When samadrishti is realized, there will be no discrimination seen in the world. All will be seen as Atma only, as himself, as the self. Then there is the anger, hatred, when there is no one different from us on whom we can show our anger or hatred. Where is the point of sorrow, etc.? Only Anandam will prevail in that place. That is why in the next stanza Bhagavan says, Agila Tattvam Abhinnamai. Tattva shows the natural state of an object. Agila Tattva means it reveals the 96th Tattva of Drishti, of Shrishti. Scripture says the whole Shrishti is within this 96 Tattvas. Agila Tattvam Abhinavai. The Nija Swarupa is in this Tattvas, but it stand aside, it stand aloof, the Ahankara, which considers the Deham as I. It doesn't stand by that Ahankara which considers the Deham as I. Bhagavan says, Agam Agam என்பதற்கு அநியமாய் ஆக மெய்ப்பொருளுக்கு அபின்னமா. I'll tell you again. Agam Agam என்பதற்கு அந்நியமாகி ஆக மெய்ப்பொருளுக்கு அபின்னமா. When there is no body consciousness and the I stands alone, then the true meaning of that I stands abhinna, and the Nija Swarupa reveals as the self, saying, oh, it's me, it's only me. So, except Dehatma Bhava, The self shines in each and every object without any binna, without any discrimination. அகமே பொருளுக்கு அபிநமா பூரண சித்து எங்கும் பொருந்து முகம் உள்ள பொருள். அகமே பொருளுக்கு அபிநமா பூரண சித்து எங்கும் பொருந்தும் முகம் உள்ள பொருள். This Purana Vastu, which is found in all objects in the world, which is all pervading, is the Purana Swarupa itself. When God is all pervading, His nature is Puranatvam. When that Puranatvam is reduced by the mind and thinks that this body is I, then what happened? God becomes Anya. God becomes Anya. Dvaitam comes in. Bhagavan says in the next stanza, Agam Agam என்பதற்கு அந்நியமாகி. Only when this Dehatma Bhava perishes, all pervading Purnavastu will be realized. With Dehatma Bhava, Ahankara, all other thoughts comes in. எண்ணங்களே மனம் யாவினும் நான் என்னும் எண்ணமே மூலமாமுந்தே பர. உபதேசம் Bhagavan says. When one considers body as I, then there will be many thoughts coming up. Ahankara, Mamahara will come in. This is mine, and if someone grabs it, I feel sorrow. Even if someone gives me something which I don't like, then also I become very sorrow. So, escaping from this sorrow, one has to abide in the self, and so self is Anandamaya. The mind which gets abided in the self also becomes Anandamaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramananjali.
We will now have the sharing of Ramanacentre by Sri Ujjwal Jagadish.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. धर्मे नाशमुपागते त्रिभुवने पर्याकुले पापतः प्रज्ञाने परितो गिरां पतिमुद सञ्चार्यमाणे जनैः सद्भावे परमेश्वरस्य च पितु सन्देहडोलाङ्गते द्वीपकैतवमर्त्य केकितुरग त्वामन्तर कसतां रमणाय लोकगुरवे नमः रमणाय लोकगुरवे नमः धर्मनाशवागुतिदे त्रिलोकवु मरुळागी ಗಿದೆ ಪಾಪದಿ ಧರ್ಮನಾಶವಾಗುತ್ತಿದೆ ತ್ರಿಲೋಕವು ಮರುಳಾಗಿದೆ ಪಾಪದಿ ನಿಜ ಜ್ಞಾನ ಅರಿಯದೆ ಜನರು ಎಲ್ಲೆಡೆ ವಾಗ್ವಾದದಿ ತೊಡಗಿಹರು ಸದಾ ಪೊರೆವ ತಂದೆ ಪರಶಿವನ ಇರುವೆ ಸಂದೇಹಿಸಲ್ಪಡುತ್ತಿದೆ ರಕ್ಷೆ ನೀನೆ ನರವೇಶಿ ನವಿಲುವಾಹನನೆ ನೀನಲ್ಲದೆ ಹಿತರಾರೆ ಮಗೆ ರಮಣನಿಗೆ ಲೋಕ ಗುರುವಿಗೆ ನಮನ ರಮಣನಿಗೆ ಲೋಕ ಗುರುವಿಗೆ ನಮನ. We are meditating on the 18th verse of Ramanacentre written by Ganapati Muni. In the last verse, Ganapati Muni had put a request to Ramana, who is none other than the Girvana Senapate, the commander-in-chief of the celestial army, to come down to the earth and adorn that seat of wisdom which was long back adorned by Vyasa and then by Shankara. The world is waiting, and this is the right time for you to come, O Girvana Senapate, because it is your promise that yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuttanam adharmasya tatatmanam shrijamyaham paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. You have promised that you will come again and again, yuge yuge, you will come and you will uplift the dharma. And now I see the situation that the dharma is getting destroyed. Because the dharma is getting destroyed, people are not understanding what to do. They are bewildered and they are confused and they are doing wrong actions. They are doing wrong things. And people are not understanding that supreme state of jnana. They think only to talk about the jnana and give huge lectures about it and understanding and quoting from the various Vedas and Upanishads, it's alone true jnana. They are not able to understand that supreme state of jnana, which is the truth, which is the essence of all these Vedas and Upanishads. And they are even questioning the existence of that Shiva, that Parameshwara, that Supreme, who is the Father of the whole world, who is ever existent. Who is ever existent. We are questioning the existence of such a Shiva. And from this situation, the only solace, the only protector is you, O One, who has to come and who has come in the human form, who is none other than the one who rides on the peacock. Other than you, who else do we have? What else is good to the world other than you, says Ganapati Muni in this verse. When we listen to the word dharma, the great scholars, they say this dharma can be interpreted in various ways. And now few people interpret as the various faiths that one have. But dharma is the right thing to do. And dharma is the duty, the right duty one needs to do. And we hear from Shriji Kameshwar that the first word, which is in Bhagavad Gita, is Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre. Bhagavad Gita starts with the word dharma. And if you connect the first word and the last word of the Bhagavad Gita, we again get back the same magical word, dharma, which is the right duty that one needs to perform. And just like how Sri Krishna, Gitacharya Sri Krishna gave the Upadesha of dharma, what is the right thing to do to Arjuna? In the same way, Ramana has, in his Ramana Gita, gives us what is the paramount duty that needs to be done. He tells the devotees that for the one who desires the highest, to know oneself is the paramount duty. That alone is the kartavya, the dharma that one needs to have. And all the adharma, all the wrongdoings that we are doing is only because we are not holding on to this dharma. We are not abiding as our own true self. Instead, we are holding on to this false adharma that we are this body. And this, Bhagavan says, is the greatest sin. It is the first sin and the greatest sin. Because we think we are this body, our mind and the body is engaged in wrong work. We are engaged constantly glorifying this body. We are constantly causing all this havoc that we are causing in this world only because of this false notion that we are thinking we are this body. And Ramana has come to rescue us from this Mahapapa that we are doing, to rescue us from this adharma and to show us the path of dharma. And we heard that Ramana has come to this earth to tell us what is the way to get liberated. They say if you are born in Kamalalaya, you are liberated. And Ramana says, it's okay, don't worry that you are not born in Tiruvarur, which is Kamalalaya. Kamalalaya is nothing but your own heart lotus. If you are born in that heart lotus as the self, then you are liberated. And if you die in Kashi, then you are liberated. But how can we be liberated right now from our difficulties? And Ramana says that words of the scriptures, it only means that Kashi is the light of the self. If one merges in the light of that self, that is true liberation. And if you see Chidambaram, then you are liberated. And Chidambaram is Chit Ambaram. It is the space of the heart. And if you realize that space of heart and you float in that and float and dance and see that eternal dance of Shiva in that heart space, Chit Ambara, then you are liberated. And he concludes saying that if you remember Arunachala, and Arunachala me aham, Arunachala is the heart, you just have to remember that you are the heart. And with this constant remembrance, you are liberated to bring us this beautiful path to turn back to our own true self, which is the paramount duty, which is the dharma, which is the only solution for all the bewilderment and the confusions that is there in the world, and to be free from the sins that we are doing in the world. This is the only path, says Ramana. And to reveal this truth to all of us, he says, Arunachala gave me birth in this world as my father and mother. Ammayum appanumai. He came and he gave me birth in this world. And before I could fall into the ocean of samsara, he pulled me and he gave his own state to me. And why did he give his own state to me? So that I can reveal the glory of that supreme state to all the true seekers and to the whole world, and be available to the whole world as Vishvacharya. Arunachala has bestowed this state of himself to him, says Ramana. And when we are talking about dharma, how can we not talk about Ramana's father, Sundar Mayar, whose Punyatiti comes in this very auspicious month? Sundar Mayar was a great dharmishta. He was ever abiding in his duties. So because the scholars and the biographers says that he was the follower of Jnana Marga. So he was ever abiding in the self within. Because he was abiding in the dharma within, he was able to display dharma in every action. The Sundar Mandiram, his house, was open for every newcomer to come and stay there, and food was provided to every comer. And he was respected not only by the common men when they had any conflict. When they thought what they were doing was adharma, they came to Sundaram Iyer to get the solution and get the right upadesha to get back to dharma. And he was a pleader, and everyone respected him, including the robbers and the king of Ramnad, who had come for the renovation of the Bhuminatha temple at Tiruchuli. And when Sundar Mayar had not visited the king of Ramnad, the king of Ramnad sent word to Sundar Mayar and asked, Sundar Mayar, are you upset with something? Are you upset with me? Why did you not come and see me and talk to me? And Sundar Mayar said, I did not think I was a great one who had some work with the king of Ramnad. Please tell me, Maharaja, what is the work that needs to be done? I will do it with full of my sincerity. And the Raja told, we are renovating this Bhuminatha temple, and everybody has told that it is only by your help that this work will get completed successfully. So I want your help in the renovation of Bhuminatha temple. And this is the way how even the king and the robbers respected Sundar Mayar. And to this Dharmatma Sundaramayar, Ramana was born. The Jnana Swarupa Ramana was born. And to tell us this truth, that if one holds on to the Dharma, one holds on to the self, which is the paramount duty, then the Jnana is born. To reveal this truth to us, Ramana has come to this world as the Vishwacharya Ramana. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. We will now have the sharing of Sri Ramana Ashtottaram by Prashada.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as a self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, we are meditating in this part of the Satsang on the namas or the names in the litany of 108 names of Bhagavan Ramana, composed by Vishwanatha Swami, Bharadwaja Vishwanatha Virachita. And he is also dwelling or taking us on the journey of Bhagavan's life through these namas. We are on the nama, we had dwelt on the nama Paramartha Vide Namaha. He who became enlightened in the July of 1896, 17th of July 1896, by undergoing an experience of death, by facing and conquering death. He became the sage of steady wisdom, as it were. And the next nama, which Vishwanatha Swami hails Bhagavan with, is Tivraya Namaha. The intensity of the experience of the self. It is a most intense experience. Bhagavan says in Ramana Gita that one who is abiding in the self is performing the most intense tapas, constantly, continuously performing the most intense tapas. It is a dynamic state. It is not a passive state. It is not that this person does nothing. On the other hand, Mahadidam tapo Ramana Bhagyam, he says in Upadesha Saram also. It is the greatest tapas, very, very intense. So Vishwanatha Swami says Tivra, because from that moment onwards, from the moment when Bhagavan became enlightened till he dropped his body on 14th April 1950, Bhagavan remained in that state of intense tapas, this intense tapas of abiding steadily in the self, not even wavering for a second. See, the intensity, Bhagavan gives a sweet example. He gives the example of Shruti in music. That it seems so natural that a person observing one who is abiding in the self may not even be aware of that intensity. It's so natural to an adept at music to hold to the Shruti. It is so natural, it is such an undercurrent. And Bhagavan says, for me, no matter what I did, whether I was walking or talking or eating or engaged in any other activity, my attention was completely fixed on the self. That is the Tivra. Just like a singer may actually journey through various notes of music, but the attention of the singer never wavers from the Shruti or the keynote. That's how intense it is. In Hindustani music, they ensure that this intense experience of Shruti happens by giving the students a practice of a single note, only a single note for months on end. One single note, and after that, once that note is mastered, the next note. This is in order to have the intense experience of the Shruti. Tivraya Namaha, very intense. And that intensity, that rootedness in the self, it burst forth or it expressed itself in the form of a flood of tears. This flood of tears in our dance drama, the Yatirai Kandam, we have depicted the glory of this flood of tears which came forth from Bhagavan Ramana after his enlightenment. It was so intense that the dam had to burst. And how was that? The force of that current which he was experiencing, the tivra of that current which he was experiencing, broke all the barriers of the body. So the flood tide had to come, the floods had to come, they had to inundate the whole world, they had to purify the whole world. And the flood came. He stood in front of Goddess Meenakshi with tears pouring from his eyes. He stood sometimes in front of Nataraja. He says, Nataraja in Shivakama Sundari, the Nataraja in Madurai, who is dancing with his right leg up instead of the left leg. And he stood in front of the images of the 63 Nayanmars. And some thoughts would arise, sweet child there, without any background about self-knowledge, Brahman, nothing, no words in his dictionary, no prior thoughts about any of this, no acclimatization, no gradual sadhana. And he is there. So he is praying actually. The thoughts come in the form of prayers also. I want devotion. What greater devotion can anyone have on this earth? And that's why Vishwanatha Swami says, Tivra, Tivra. He had that intense love for the self, intense. And that cut away everything else. He lost all interest in everything else. In his food, he used to appreciate good food, and his younger paternal aunt, his Chitti, was concerned about his indifference. Bhagavan said, I am having some kind of a headache. That's all. He did not know, but it was an intense kind of a disease. It's a fever actually, which gripped him. And that intense fever left him only later when he would report to Arunachala, Father, I have come. Until then, that fever, actually a physical fever was also there in him. That tivra was there. But after he reached Arunachala also, his entire life, the underlying word was tivra. It was always intense. But we could see all the devotees for all times to come, could see that tivra, could see that intensity. And we will see that this word tivra is underlying his journey which is to come, his journey to Arunachala, his early years at Arunachala, absolutely lost in the self, absolutely intensely immersed in that magnitude of the self. So Vishwanatha Swami says, Tivra. And today we heard Sadhu Om Swami saying, unless we have that intensity, at least whatever intensity is possible for the intellect, for the mind, to that degree, if we are intense about getting self-knowledge, then only that Mahashakti Nipata will happen, which happened for Bhagavan. So he was not Tivra afterwards alone. He was Tivra from his birth, because He was constantly in the remembrance of Arunachala. There was that intensity always, but it was spontaneous. And at this point of time, its magnitude revealed itself. It just became explicit. So we have to hold on with that, thinking of that young boy, thinking of that young Ramana, all the time immersed in the self, uncaring for anything in this world. Let us also turn back to the self. The self alone matters. Nothing else matters. Nothing else exists. It's all only a manifestation of the self, and the self alone. If we say there is something manifest, it is only the self. It is only an expression of the self. So let us turn back every time. Turn back with that love. Bhagavan describes that Tivra as as love. Parival Ulam Uruganalam. He says, if you want to know who Arunachala Ramana is, he's shining in your heart. But you have to melt. You have to melt with love. See, when the fire is lit, then what happens? Ninneri erittene neerakidumun. That is actually it melts. The being melts with that tapasya. The thoughts melt with that tapasya. The identification with the body melts with that intensity. And so we have to hold the Tivra Ramana. Pray to the Tivra Ramana to give us also that Tivra, as he prayed to the 63 Nayanmars to give him their devotion. Let us pray to the Tivra Ramana to fill us with his intensity of love for the self. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
We will now have the chanting of Aksharamana Male by Srimati V. Radha and Vallabh.
Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala. Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala. அருணாச்சலமென அகமே நினைப்பவர் அகத்தை வேறறுப்பாய் அருணாச்சலா. அழகு சுந்தரம் போலகமும் நீயூற்று அபிநமாயிருப்போம் அருணாச்சலா. புகுந்தீர் தொன்னக குகை சிறையாய் அமர்வித்ததென் கொல் அருணாச்சலா. ஆரேக்காவென்னை ஆடனை அகற்றிடில் அகிலம் பழித்திடும் அருணாச்சலா. இப்படி தப்புன ஏறினை பித்தாயினி யார் விடுவார் அருணாச்சலா. ஈவிடும் அன்னையில் பெரிதருள் புரிவோய் இதுவோ உனதருள் அருணாச்சலா. உனையே மாற்றி ஓடாதுள்ளத்தின் மேல் உறுதியாயிருப்பார் அருணாச்சலா. ஊர் சொற்றுடம் விழாதுன்னை கண்டடங்கிட உன்னழகை காட்டருணாச்சலா. என்னை அழித்திப்போதென்னை கலவாவிடில் இதுவோ ஆண்மை அருணாச்சலா. ஏன் இந்த உறக்கம் என்னை பிறர் இழுக்க இது உனக்கழகோ அருணாச்சலா. ஐம்புல கள்வர் அகத்தினில் புகும் போது அகத்தில் நீ இல்லையோ அருணாச்சலா. ஒருவனாம் உன்னை ஒழித்தவர் வருவார் உன் சூதே இது அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ, அருணாச்சல சிவ, அருணாச்சல சிவ, 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 அருணாச்சலா. अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल अरुणाचलम வாழி அன்பர்களும் வாழி அக்ஷரமண மாலை வாழி நமோ ரமண.
Namo Ramana. We conclude today's satsang with the Ashtottara Puja to Bhagavan at the Ramana Maharshi Heritage Center. The puja will be conducted by Sri Ujjwal Jagadish. The chanting of the puja Ashtottara will happen from Uma Shripati, Ashwini Balaji and Revathi Shankar.
भारद्वाज विश्वनाथ विरचितं श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तरशतनामावळी अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशे यस्योर्मि मात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि. ॐ महासेनमहों शेनजाताय नमः. ॐ श्रीरमणाय नमः. ॐ गुरवे नमः. ॐ अखण्डसंविदाकाराय नमः. ॐ महौजसे नमः. ॐ कारणोद्भवाय नमः. ॐ जगद्गीतावताराय नमः. ॐ श्रीभूमिनाथस्थलोतिताय नमः. ॐ पराशरकुलोत्तंसाय नमः. ॐ सुन्दरार्य तपःफलाय नमः. ॐ कमनीय सुचारित्राय नमः. ॐ सहायाम्बा सहायवते नमः. ॐ शोणाचलमहोलीनमानसाय नमः. ॐ स्वर्णहस्तकाय नमः. ॐ श्रीमद्द्वादशान्तमहास्थले लब्धविद्योदयाय नमः. ॐ महाशक्तिनिपातेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः. ॐ परमार्थविदे नमः. ॐ तीव्राय नमः. ॐ पितृपदानेशिने नमः. ॐ इन्दुमौलिना पितृमते नमः. ॐ पितुरादेशतः शोणशैलं प्राप्ताय नमः. ॐ तपोमयाय नमः. ॐ उदासीनाय नमः. ॐ महायोगिने नमः. ॐ महोत्साहाय नमः. ॐ कुशाग्रदिये नमः. ॐ शान्तसङ्कल्पसंरम्भाय नमः. ॐ सुसन्दृशे नमः. ॐ सवित्रे नमः. ॐ स्थिराय नमः. ॐ तपक्षपितसर्वाङ्गाय नमः. ॐ पुल्लाम्बुजविलोचनाय नमः. ॐ चन्द्रिकासितहासश्रीमण्डिताननमण्डलाय नमः. ॐ चूलवाट्यां समासीनाय नमः. ॐ चूडिताखिलविभ्रमाय नमः. ॐ वेदवेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञाय नमः. ॐ चिन्मुद्रिणे नमः. ॐ त्रिगुणातिगाय नमः. ॐ विरूपाक्षगुहावासाय नमः. ॐ विराजदचलाकृतये नमः. ॐ उद्दीप्तनयनाय नमः. ॐ पूर्णाय नमः. ॐ रचिताचलताण्डवाय नमः. ॐ गम्भीराय नमः. ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः. ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः. ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः. ॐ दक्षिणास्यनिभाय नमः. ॐ धीराय नमः. ॐ दक्षिणाभिमुखाय नमः. ॐ स्वराजे नमः. ॐ महर्षये नमः. ॐ भगवते नमः. ॐ ईड्याय नमः.
ॐ भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः. ॐ विमलाय नमः. ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः. ॐ आप्ताय नमः. ॐ ऋजुमार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः. ॐ समदृशे नमः. ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः. ॐ सत्याय नमः. ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः. ॐ अमितविक्रमाय नमः। ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः। ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः। ॐ मृदुभाषिणे नमः। ॐ दयार्णवाय नमः। ॐ श्रीशोणाचलहृद्भूतस्कन्दाश्रमनिकेतनाय नमः। ॐ सद्दर्शनोपदेष्ट्रे नमः। ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्दपरिवृताय नमः। ॐ गणेशमुनिभृङ्गेन सेविताङ्घ्रिसरोरुहाय नमः। ॐ गीतोपदेशसारादिग्रन्थसञ्चिन्नसंशयाय नमः। ॐ वर्णाश्रममतातीताय नमः। ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः। ॐ सौम्याय नमः। ॐ आत्मवते नमः। ॐ सर्वावनिमतस्थानाम् आराध्याय नमः। ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः। ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः। ॐ महाभागाय नमः। ॐ मातृमुक्तिविदायकाय नमः। ॐ विनताय नमः। ॐ विनुताय नमः। ॐ विप्राय नमः। ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः। ॐ पावकोज्ज्वलाय नमः। ॐ दर्शनादघसंहारिणे नमः। ॐ मौनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः। ॐ हृच्छान्तिकरसान्निध्याय नमः। ॐ स्मरणाद्बन्धमोचकाय नमः। ॐ अन्तस्तिमिरचण्डांशवे नमः। ॐ संसारार्णवतारकाय नमः। ॐ शोणाद्रीशस्तुतिद्रष्ट्रे नमः। ॐ हार्दविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः। ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः। ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः। ॐ कमण्डलुधराय नमः। ॐ शुभ्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः। ॐ गुहाय नमः। ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः। ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः। ॐ भवरोगभिषग्वराय नमः। ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः। ॐ देवतमाय नमः। ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः। ॐ सेनान्ये नमः। ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः। ॐ श्रीरमणभगवते नमः। श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तरशतनामपूजां समर्पयामि। यस्थाणोररुणाचलस्य पदयोः स्मृत्या जनिं प्राप्य तद् दिव्यानुग्रहसुप्रवाहविवशस्तादात्म्यभावं गतः निष्ठस्वगभीरनित्यतपसा लोकान् पुनास्यैकराट् तस्मै श्रीरमणाय ते नम इदं लोकोत्तरज्योतिषे। नमो 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 रमण सदाशिवप्रभावरण नमो महर्षि। नमो महर्षि दर्शनसुखमङ्गलमुखसकलजीवहितसम्मुख ब्रह्मसङ्गीये सदा तुष्ट सदा हृष्ट सदा शिवानन्दपुष्ट परममहर्षि ब्रह्मनिष्ठ समदर्शी नमो 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 रमण सदाशिवप्रभावरण नमो महर्षि। ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಮನವದೊಂದು ಕಾಡು ನೀನರಿತಿಹೆ ಅದರ ಜಾಡು ಹಿತವನರಿತು ನೀಡುತೆಮ್ಮ ಕೊರೆಯ ತಣಿಸಲೈ ಬೇಡಲೆಂದು ಬಂದ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿಯೇ ತಣಿವೆವಯ್ಯ ಮೋಡಿಗಾರನೇ ಹಿತವ ನುಡಿದು ಪೊರೆ ನಮ್ಮನು ಬ್ರಹ್ಮ ಸಂಘಿಯೇ. ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ ಪ್ರಭಾವರಣ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ. बोलो भगवान श्री रमण महर्षि की जय.
Jai.